You are about to be born. Not today, not in a hospital, not under fluorescent lights with monitors beeping and a team of strangers in gloves waiting to catch you. You are about to be born 100,000 years ago, in the dark, on the ground, somewhere in East Africa, into the hands of women who have done this before and women who have not. There is no epidural. There is no surgery. There is no backup plan. And the moment your mother felt the first contraction, the clock started on one of the most dangerous events in the entire history of the human species, because here is what nobody tells you about ancient childbirth. It was not simply painful. It was a biological paradox, a problem so severe, so structurally embedded in what it means to be human, that evolution has never fully solved it. And the way your ancestors navigated that paradox, across hundreds of thousands of years, reveals something profound about who we are and how we survive. So what was childbirth really like 100,000 years ago? The answer will change how you see every human who has ever lived. Let us start with the problem itself. Two things happened to your ancestors that, together, created one of the most dangerous situations in mammalian biology. First, they started walking upright. Second, their brains got enormous. Both of these changes were extraordinary advantages. But together, they created a catastrophic conflict in the female pelvis. Walking upright required a narrow, bowl-shaped pelvis to support the weight of the torso and transfer it efficiently to the legs. But giving birth to a large-brained baby requires a wide, open birth canal to let that enormous head through. These two requirements are almost directly contradictory. The pelvis cannot be perfectly optimized for both walking and birthing at the same time. Anthropologists call this the obstetric dilemma, and it is one of the most studied conflicts in human evolutionary biology. Researcher Wenda Trevathan at New Mexico State University has spent decades studying the evolutionary origins of human birth. What she found is that human birth is almost uniquely dangerous among primates. A chimpanzee infant emerges from the birth canal facing upward, toward the mother, so the mother can reach down, guide the baby out, and clear its airway herself. A human infant, because of the rotations required to navigate the human pelvis, emerges facing downward, away from the mother. This means the mother cannot safely guide the baby out alone without risking bending its spine backward against the natural curve of the neck. She needs help. She has almost always needed help. This is where something remarkable enters the story. The need for assisted birth may be one of the oldest drivers of human social cooperation. Trevathan argues that the biological necessity of having someone present at birth, someone to catch the baby, clear the airway, help with the cord, may predate modern Homo sapiens entirely. It may go back hundreds of thousands of years, deep into our ancestral past. Birth, in other words, was never meant to be a solitary event. It was always a social one, so let us reconstruct the scene. It is roughly 100,000 years ago. Your ancestor, call her a woman in her early 20s, has been feeling the early signs of labor for several hours. In a hunter-gatherer band of 30 to 40 people, she would not have been alone. The older women of the band would have recognized what was happening. They had seen it before. Some of them had survived it themselves. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy at the University of California, Davis, whose research on cooperative breeding in human evolution is foundational to our understanding of early childcare, argues that human mothers throughout prehistory relied heavily on what she calls Allomothers, other females in the group who assisted with birth, nursing, and infant care. This was not optional. It was essential for survival. A human infant is born more helpless than the newborn of almost any other primate. It cannot cling, cannot walk, cannot regulate its own temperature. It is entirely dependent. And a mother who had just survived labor, exhausted, depleted, potentially injured, could not provide everything that infant needed alone. The older women would have known what plants might help. Archaeological and ethnobotanical evidence from sites across Africa and the Middle East suggests that plant-based pain relief and labor assistance have roots stretching back deep into prehistory. Certain plant compounds, ergot-like substances, natural oxytocin-stimulating herbs, appear in the traditional birth practices of nearly every human culture ever studied. It is unlikely this knowledge began with recorded history. It almost certainly began much, much earlier, passed from woman to woman, generation to generation, in the same way fire-making was passed, or tool-shaping was passed. As embodied knowledge. As survival. Now here is the part that rewrites everything you think you know about ancient birth. The mortality rate was devastating. Research on pre-modern and contemporary forager birth outcomes, synthesized by scholars including James Chisholm and others studying life history theory, suggests that maternal mortality in prehistoric populations may have been as high as 1 in 20 to 1 in 50 per birth, dramatically higher than in the modern developed world today, where it is roughly 1 in 10,000 in countries with advanced medical care. And infant mortality in the first year of life in prehistoric populations likely exceeded 30 to 40% in many environments. Think about what it means to live inside those numbers. Every pregnancy was a genuine confrontation with death, not as an abstract possibility, but as a present, calculated, community-wide understood reality. Every woman who survived childbirth had survived something that killed a meaningful percentage of the women around her. Every child who made it to their first birthday had crossed a threshold that a third of their bandmates had not, and yet people kept having children. The drive to reproduce is ancient and powerful enough that even these numbers could not stop it. What they did do was shape everything around birth, the social structures, the knowledge systems, the relationships, the roles, in ways that are still visible in human culture today. Here is the counterintuitive twist that changes everything. In many ways, birth in a tight-knit hunter-gatherer band may have been more supported than birth for millions of women today. Not safer in the medical sense, the absence of surgery and antibiotics made certain complications almost certainly fatal. But more socially surrounded. More collectively held. The laboring woman in a prehistoric band was surrounded by people who knew her, who had been through this themselves or witnessed it many times, who had a direct stake in her survival and the survival of her child, and who brought every piece of knowledge their community had accumulated over generations. Compare that to a woman giving birth alone in a modern city. Far from family, in a medical system she may barely understand, with strangers performing procedures she has no context for. The technology is incomparably better. The social surround is often incomparably worse. Anthropologist Sheila Kitzinger, who spent her career studying birth across cultures, argued that the medicalization of birth in the 20th century solved many physical problems while simultaneously severing women from the communal, embodied, female-led knowledge systems that had supported birth for hundreds of thousands of years. Both things can be true. The hospital saves lives the band could not save. And the band offered something the hospital rarely provides. Your body carries the evidence of all of this. The width of the female pelvis. The rotation a baby makes during birth. The helplessness of the human newborn. The instinct of a laboring woman to reach for another human hand. The way a newborn recognizes its mother's voice, a voice it has been hearing for months before it was born, and turns toward it in the first moments of life. These are not accidents. They are the accumulated solutions of 100,000 years of survival, written into flesh and bone and reflex. Every human who has ever lived came into this world through that same narrow passage, into the hands of someone waiting to receive them. Most of those hands belonged to women in firelight, doing something they had watched and learned and practiced, in the dark, on the ground, together. You are here because they succeeded.